I've got two questions on basically what I consider filters, and I'll kind of explain that. So one's going to use a higher time frame condition as a filter, and the other one's going to use a moving average as a filter. So so I've got two filter questions, and then I've also got a more complex question on basically connecting multiple conditions together. This question came from Asif, and so we've got one crossover, and then we got a second crossover, and these all have to happen within 4 bars of each other, and then we need to wait for price to pull back to, let's see, I'll just use another circle, I guess. And we need to wait for price to pull back to within 3 ticks of this moving average here. So this moving average has been coined as trigger lines. So this is coined as the large trigger lines, which just means that it's a slower moving average. There's also what's called small trigger lines. So you have small trigger lines and large trigger lines. So the smaller trigger lines are just a set of these moving averages, but they move faster, right? A smaller period, so they're faster moving. They hug price a lot closer, but Asif is just using the larger trigger lines, which is just the slower moving average. So he's waiting for price to pull back within 3 ticks of these larger trigger lines, and then that's going to fire off the trade. So, and I actually have a screenshot that Asif sent in. So these are always great to have, right? Yeah, sending in screenshots, kind of illustrating. In the trading world, a picture is truly worth 1,000 words. So this is really great if you guys can mark up a chart like this to help explain what you're wanting to do. So we have number 1 over here. So he's outlining that the large triggers are rolling over and crossing each other. And then we have an EMA 20 and an EMA 50 down here crossing each other. So the EMA 20 is really hard to see. I know it's a green line on a blue background, so it doesn't stick out very well, but hopefully you can see it where it's crossing the bars right there. And so the EMAs cross each other here, and as it mentions over here, these need to happen within 4 bars of each other, right? So and then there's another limitation here, or requirement I should say, whereas so number 3, so for this short trade, the high price of the bars need to reach within 3 ticks of the large triggers, right? So price needs to move up to the large triggers, and let's see, somewhere along here it mentions, oh, here we go. So this comment over here, so we've got the arrow saying that within 25 bars, price needs to, so after we get this crossover condition, I should say, after the crossover, or after the large triggers roll over, there's a 25 bar limit. So that's what this wider rectangular box is it's outlining the 25 bar limit. So within this 25 bar limit, that's price needs to pull back up to the large trigger lines within that 25 bar limit. And then Asif has marked the bar here. We got 4 red down arrows. So that's marking the bar that the signal, that the BloodHound signal should take place on. So and then there's some other conditions down here. So so once the EMA 20 and the 50 cross each other, that's going to kind of reset the whole process, and the process can start over again. All right. So I guess what that's saying is that once this 25 bar limit has been reached. So if price hasn't pulled back within this 25 bar limit, then basically the whole setup is dead, and you just have to wait for the next one. So Asif is kind of has outlined the start of the next setup process, right? So right here, so we got so we've got the 20 EMA, right? The lighter green line, you can barely kind of see it crossing there, and you can see that the large triggers are crossing down here. So they both cross within 4 bars, and that kind of restarts the whole process over again. So, all right, let's see. Yeah, I think that covers it all. So let me get rid of that, and so this is the exact place that screenshot was taken from. So let's see, there we go. Let's see, I'm just thinking if I need to kind of lay out any further groundwork on this. See, no, I don't think so. So I'll just get right into it. So the first condition I'm going to build are these 2 crossover conditions here. And so remember, they need to happen within 4 bars of each other, right? So with BloodHound already on my chart, I'll just open up BloodHound, click the button up on top here, and I'll give this a name. So we're just going to use today's date for this Friday. All right. And I'm just going to start working on the logic board here. So switch over to the logic tab, and let's see, I'm not sure what to call this, so I'll just call it a large trigger setup, something like that. So all right, so I'm going to grab a couple of crossover solvers. All right, we got one, and I'll grab another one. All right, so when you're starting to build something, when you come up with an idea, start to build something, I always suggest that you take the solver that you're going to build and always connect it up to result, so that way you can see what's happening in real time, and you can make sure that what you're building, is correct. So, all right, so let's name this solver. So this is going to be the large trigger crossover. All right, so so you notice these large triggers are a pair of moving averages. All right, they're actually a pair of moving averages. So it's the same thing as having a 50 EMA and a 20 EMA, 2 separate EMAs, but this is 2 EMAs in one indicator here. And I'll show you that indicator in just a moment here. So let's change that to the trigger line indicator, and you can find this up on Big Mike's and I believe NinjaTrader's site as well. So it's called the ANA trigger lines. So if you don't have this on your system, just do a search on Ninja's download area for trigger lines, or better yet, you can go to the author's website. Let me just take a moment here and pull that up here. Let's see if I have it. Nope, doesn't look like it. All right, so it's lizardtrader.com. So Fat Tails has opened up his own website now called Lizard Trader. So I imagine you could probably find it in the downloads area or something like that, right? So you can either find it on Big Mike's, ninjas or just get it directly from them. Right. Okay. So let's switch this over to the ANA trigger lines. And so we're using what are called the large trigger lines. And so the 80 and 20, those are the settings for the large trigger lines. So we can just leave those settings alone. And we can see that there's two different plots here. So we got the trigger line and then the average trigger line, right? So the trigger line is the faster moving average, right? It's going to be the faster moving average, and the trigger average is going to be the slower one because it's an average of the faster one. So, for the crossover solver, typically you want to put the faster moving average in indicator A, and you want to put the slower moving average on indicator B. So we're going to select the faster moving average first, so that'll be the trigger. And then down in indicator B, we're going to select the slower moving average. Alright, once again, we're using the large trigger settings, so 80 and 20, and all we have to do is just select the slower lines, and as soon as it's calculated, there we go. So there is our short signal for that cross down. Let's take a look over here, right? There's a long signal for that cross up. Alright, so we've got one done. Now, if you remember, these two crossovers need to occur within 4 bars of each other. Let's pull this back up here. Yeah, so over here it says both conditions need to take place within 4 bars of each other. So that's what the smaller rectangular represents there. So what I'm going to do is, in our crossover solver, I'm going to take this look back and bump it up to 4. And we'll see what that does here in just a moment. So you notice how now we get 4 bars with a short output and 4 bars with a long output. Alright, so that'll make sense here in just a moment. So next, we're going to make the crossover solver for the 2 EMAs here. So let me name this here. Alright, so we got an EMA 20 and 50 crossover. And I'm actually going to connect this solver up to the result node. There we go. Okay, so now we just need to change our indicators over to the EMA. Alright, change that to 20. Alright, change this one to the 50 EMA, like so. Alright, so there's our EMAs crossing each other, right? So the red lines are the EMAs. And we're also going to change our look back to 4 as well. Alright, so now, both of these need to cross over approximately at the same time within 4 bars. So both of those crossovers need to happen together. So we're going to use an AND node and connect those into an AND node. All right. So think of it this way. So the large triggers and the EMAs have to cross each other within 4 bars. And so now we can see, all right, so it just so happens that these two cross each other at the same time, and so we get 4 short bars. But if you look over here at the long crossover, the large triggers crossed over first, and then 4 bars later the EMAs crossed over. So we only got 1 output from that crossover. So you can see that. So this is what the AND node is doing, is it's requiring, or it's letting you know when the 2 crossovers occur within 4 bars of each other. And we could probably find some examples. Yeah. So we can see we got the large triggers here crossing over each other twice. And let's see, actually no, the EMAs don't cross each other there, so that's not a good example. Let's see, well, yeah, so here's the large trigger. It crossed first, and then 4 bars later we got the EMAs crossing each other. And okay, here's an example I wanted to show you. So we got the large triggers crossing, but the EMAs crossed too late. So there was no, there was no crossover signal generated there. There you go. So that's what the AND node is doing, is it's requiring both of these crossovers to happen at the same time, or not at the same time, but within 4 bars of each other. All right, so let's get back to our spot where we're working. So one thing that's really handy is when you're starting to build something, find an ideal spot on the chart, where your trade signal occurs, and then circle it so you can find it again quickly. There we go. Yeah, so I just put a big circle here so I can scan through the chart and find it again pretty quickly. It's always handy to have. Alright, so that's condition 1 and 2. Let's go back to the screenshot. Yeah, so that's condition 1 and condition 2. And so let's see, the next condition is actually, I'm gonna say that that this crossover has 25 bars for condition 3 to occur. So I guess this is condition 3, but I'm gonna build. I guess we'll call this condition 2.5. So I'm gonna build, the part that limits condition 3 to happen within 25 bars, right? So I'm going to build this 25 bar limitation kind of requirement there. And there's a couple of ways I can do this. So the simple way is I can take this look back here. Let's take a look at this look back. And so let's see, I'm going to set the displacement to 0 because we don't want a displacement. What we want is a look back. And this look back will extend these crossover signals forward in time. You see how they're being extended forward in time like that? So, and we want to use the max mode here. Shrink this up a little bit. There you go. So the crossover happens, and then it's marked for 25 bars and marked for 25 bars. However, actually this connecting the look back to the AND was actually slightly incorrect. So let me take a look at the explanation here. Yeah, so the explanation says within 25 bars from the large triggers rolling over. So the large triggers rolling over. So that's key here. So what I did is I actually connected it to the AND node, which the AND node identifies both of those moving averages rolling over. So really what I want to do is I want to take the solver that looks at the large trigger crossover and extend that forward 25 bars. Right. So there we go. So we can see here's there's the large trigger, and that crossover has extended forward for 25 bars, and also the same down here. This large trigger extended forward for 25 bars. So I can use this to limit, the trade setup. And let's see here. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to set that off to the side, and I'm going to show another way that I can do this as well. So this is the easy way. Now there's another way that's has more functionality. So I can also use this signal extender. Right. So you can see that what we did is we took this crossover signal and we extended it forward in time by 25 bars. And that was using the look back node. So we also have a signal extender that can do the same thing. Let's connect that in. So there is definitely a functionality difference between the two. So the signal extender has more options built into it. So when you're using the look back, it's just a simple let's see, what's a good way to explain this? It just does one thing. It's just going to extend for 25 bars, and that's it. There's no other flexibility to this look back, whereas the signal blocker has more flexibility to it. And so with the signal extender, so I'm going to extend the signal for 25 bars, like so. And but the signal extender has these resets, so that gives me the flexibility to turn the signal off before it reaches the 25 bar limit if needed. And so I'll show you here. So I'm going to look at the look back here, and let me find a spot on the chart here, and yeah, here we go. So you see here we got the large trigger lines doing a bunch of different crossovers and such, right? So we're getting the short crossover, then we get a long crossover, and then quite literally, 5 bars later, 4 bars later, we get a short crossover. So we got the short crossover, but we still have these long signals here. And, it's probably, if your large triggers, or if your moving averages do cross over each other, and then switch back again, right? You probably don't want to have this long crossover condition anymore, right? So you probably want to get rid of these long crossover conditions, because if your moving averages cross down again, you probably want to be looking for short trades, and you probably don't want to look for long trades and short trades. You probably just want to be looking for one or the other, right? So you wouldn't want these overlapping long output and short output at the same time. So the signal extender allows us to prevent that. So what I'm going to do is set the correct resets here. So let's see, I think input signal. Yeah, so I turned input signal to true, and actually, sorry, didn't want that one. I wanted input opposite signal. There we go. So now when we look at this, we can see that the signal extender gives us one or the other, right? So either it'll give us a short output for 25 bars, or it'll give us a long output, but then we can see the long output stops if we get a short cross down. So I know it's kind of hard to see, you know, the small little crossovers over the large trigger here, but as soon as that large trigger crosses back down, right, you can see that the long output turns off and then the short output turns on. So we're either in a short state, long state, or a short state or a long state, but we're not in both states at the same time, right? So remember, the look back, it's just a simple extender, and so sometimes we're in both a long and a short state at the same time, whereas the signal extender allows us to just be in one state or the other. So I'm going to use the signal extender instead. And so the key was to use the input opposite signal, and I set that to true. So input opposite signal, what that's doing is, let's see here. Let me grab an arrow. So our trigger lines, our moving averages cross up, and so the signal extender is in a long state right now, and then the trigger line or the moving averages cross down, and we get a short signal from that cross down. So this short is opposite of the long, right? So this short cross down, right? So let me just take a look at the original crossover. So this is the crossover solver that we're looking at, right? So you can see the crossover solver is, you know, giving us going from a long cross up to a short cross down. So this short cross down is considered opposite of the long cross up that we had. So right, so the short cross down is the opposite of that long, and so that's why this input opposite signal, when it's set to true, it reset the signal extender, right? So in other words, it turned off the signal extender. So the short signals, which are opposite the long, the short signals turned off the long signals here, and then so then we had the short signals being extended for 25 bars, but then we had a long cross up occur, and so the long signal that came in, which is opposite of the short, this long, then turned off, or it reset the shorts being extended forward. So that's what these reset functions do, is essentially they turn off the signal extender, or they reset the signal extender, so it's no longer extending. So, all right. So I think, you know, probably the signal extender is going to be the one that we want to use. So I'm just going to set this off to the side like that. All right. So now let's start looking for condition 3 here. So let's bring up our screenshot. So condition 3 is we're looking for the high price of the bar. So the high of the bar needs to reach within 3 ticks of the large trigger. Right. So yeah, so we're going to use the comparison solver to do this. We're going to compare if the high price of the bar is within 3 ticks of the I guess it's going to be the faster trigger line. So right, the trigger line down on the bottom here. That's going to be so the trigger line on the bottom is going to be the faster trigger line, right? So remember, the slower trigger line is going to be the one on top because it's moving slower. Right, so to do that, let's grab a comparison solver. So this comparison solver has this special output condition. So we have A equals B within 0 ticks, within so many ticks. So that's what we're going to use. So what I can do is change this to 3. So I can change my large amount and small amount to 3 ticks. And let me just click off and click back on. So now we can say A equals B within 3 ticks. Right? So this 3 tick value came from setting our small amount. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for A, so something equaling something else within 3 ticks. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set A to the high price of the bar. And let me find the area we were working in. There we go. Alright, so we're going to set A to the high price of the bar, and then we're going to set B to the moving average, to our trigger line moving average here. Alright, so we'll set A. We're going to change this from an indicator value to price. And let's take a look at the screenshot here. So this is a screenshot of a short trade setup. We're in a short trade. So Asif is using the high price to trigger a short trade in this example. So getting back to the solver, so to trigger a short trade or to get a short output, we're going to use the high price. And then the opposite is going to be true for a long trade signal. So we'll set that to the low price there. Alright, so we have A set to the high and the low price. Now next we need to set up B. So B is going to be our trigger line moving average. So we'll change the SMA to the trigger lines here. So there we go. Let's grab that trigger line. And so we're using large trigger line values, so 80 and 20. We'll leave that alone. So the trigger plot is the faster moving one. So we want to use the faster moving one. So remember, so the trigger average plot is going to be the one further away. So remember, so it's always, you always need to know, your indicator very well that you're using. You need to know the name of the plots for your indicator, so that way you know which plot that you're using in BloodHound. So, all right, so the trigger line's already selected for us. We can click OK. And so now we need to set up our outputs, because right now this A equals B within 3 ticks is set to 0. That's turned off. So we actually want to turn that on. So, but first I'm going to turn these guys off, and we'll set that to 1. Right. So all these other conditions, so A greater than B, those conditions are turned off. A less than B is turned off, right? They're all set to 0. But A equals B within 3 ticks is turned on. And we're going to turn the short output off as well. And as well, we're going to set the A equals B within 3 ticks. We're going to turn that one on, like so. All right, so now if we look at the chart, right, we can see whenever price comes within 3 ticks of our moving average, we're getting an output here. So And we're getting an output. Well, I should say just the solver itself is giving us an output whenever the high price of the bar gets within 3 ticks of the faster trigger line. So, but that's okay. That's just one of these conditions. So once we connect it into the rest of this with an AND node, then it'll give us our single trade trigger. All right, so let's see. Let's take a look at the next step here. Let's see, and so condition 4 is just pointing out that that's the bar where the trade will trigger. So okay, so that's it for the conditions. We've built all the conditions, so now we just need to connect them all together. And let's see. So we're going to need an AND node here to connect all of these together. So we've got, let's see, just a moment, let me get my chart ready here. Okay. So we've got the large triggers crossing each other and this 25 bar limit, right? This 25 bar limit here. So that's we got this. So we're going to take that, connect it into this AND node. So we also have this that's looking for, right, the 2 sets of moving averages crossing each other within 4 bars. So let's see, let's rename this AND node. So I can say crossover let's see, within 4 bars. Right, so this AND node is our 2 crossover conditions happening within 4 bars. Right, so there's that, right? We got the 2 crossovers happening within 4 bars and it's being marked. Now, so this is a requirement. Now, we need to get this condition extended forward until the trade actually fires up. So I'll show you why. So if we take this AND node, if we look at this guy, right, so there's our large triggers being extended forward 25 bars. Now if we take this condition here, connect it up, now all of a sudden we get nothing, right? So we don't get, there's no output. There's no output anymore where the trade actually fires off. So let's see, let's mark it here. So I'll mark it with 4 down arrows as well. Right, so there's no output here where the trade's actually going to fire off, and that's because this hasn't been extended forward in time. So we need to extend this forward in time here. So I'm going to disconnect that, and I'm going to use a look back. So I think this time, I think I could just use just a simple look back here to do that. So set our displacement to 0, and we'll set our look back to 25. And we want the mode, set that to max. And so now when our crossovers happen, so now the crossovers, both crossover conditions get extended when they both occur at this, within 4 bars. It gets extended forward, and same here. So you notice how the crossover happened here of the large trigger, but we can see the output, this long output, doesn't start until the EMAs cross over each other. So that's to be expected. Right, so what we're extending is we're extending when both of these crossovers happen at the same time, or, well, not the same time, but within 4 bars. So, all right, so now if I take a look at this AND node and connect this look back into it, now we can see we have this short kind of state. So this short output is basically telling us that, hey, we got a large trigger crossover, we got our EMAs crossing over, and now we're going to extend it forward 25 bars and see. So this will allow, and we can check to see if price is going to come up and touch our large trigger to fire off that trade. All right, so this is just kind of the setup for condition 1 and 2, and we've extended it forward 25 bars to allow the actual trade setup to occur, or to allow condition 3 to occur. And so remember, so this guy is condition 3. So we can see, right, condition 3 is when price comes and touches our large trigger, and we can see it's firing off where the arrows are, where we expect. So next, now I can take this, connect it into this AND node, and you see how it did additional filtering. So now we have a really limited number of output bars here. Right, so we do have a signal now on the bar that is the actual bar that should fire off that trade, but we also have, you know, additional signals here, kind of, you know, unwanted. So whenever price comes up, let me get an arrow here. All right, so whenever the high price comes up, you know, close to the trigger line, that's when we're getting this short output, right? This short trade output. So, but Asif said he only wants to see the first one. So let's see. I think, yeah. So 4 says short signals should generate at this bar. Let's see. Well, actually, he doesn't state that he only wants to see just that 1 bar signaling, but that is the bar that the trade should be triggered on. So at this point, you know, this does actually technically meet all of his requirements. However, I'm going to take this a step forward, since this is training for you guys, and I'm going to kind of clean this up. Right, so I'm going to clean this up. So I'm going to get rid of the extra bars. You know, I'm going to get rid of the bars after here, the signals afterwards. I'm going to clean this up and get rid of that. So all we see is just the first short trade trigger there. And the way I can clean that up is with the signal blocker. So just as the name implies, the signal blocker is here to kind of block unwanted signals. So all right, so now the key is we just need to kind of figure out which resets we need here. So let's see. First step, we need to figure out, you know, how many signals do we need to block for. So we're just going to have to make some assumptions here. So we have, right, the 2 crossovers crossing, and, you know, so the next kind of assumption is after these crossovers occur, you know, how soon can price move up, you know, to actually trigger the trade? You know, how soon does that actually take place? Could that take place within? And, you know, I really don't know, but I'm going to kind of guess that probably that's not going to happen within 22 bars. So I'll set this to 22. I could set it to 25, either way, but I'm just going to set it to 22. I think that's all that's necessary. So we're going to be blocking for 22 bars, after the trade came through, right? So we can see this looks nice and clean now. But we want to make sure that we don't accidentally block any short trades that might happen right after. You never know. A short trade possibly might fire off right afterwards. So I'm going to go through the different reset functions here. And let's see, so we're not using the reset, so I'm going to turn that off. And yeah, you know what, once again, if an opposite signal comes into the input, then I want to allow that through. So let's see. Actually, no, I don't think that's necessary. Let's see. So here, I'm going to show you guys a little trick. So you see this blocked output? I'm going to set it to 0.2. And what this does is it allows you to see when the signal blocker is actually doing its blocking. All right, so you see this little small output here that's set to 0.2. So this bar is the actual trade trigger, and this bar here is just the minor output. And actually, if I see, let me squeeze this down here. There. That tells me that this tells me when the signal blocker's doing its blocking. And so actually, I don't think we need any resets on this. In this particular case, I don't think we need any resets. So yeah, so we'll just block for 22 bars, and it just cleans it up. So we'll just keep it that simple. Yeah, because I'm kind of guessing that just based on the elaborate nature of all these setups, that we're probably not going to get another short signal firing right away, and we're probably not going to get a long trade firing right away. But even if for some reason a price reversed and it did set up for a long trade, like right here, we're almost kind of set up for a long trade, but price never pulled back in time. Right, so we can see that essentially price didn't pull back to the large trigger in time. So from here, right, from here to here, this is more than 25 bars. Yeah, so I don't think the system's going to get a short signal or a short condition firing. And I don't think we're going to get a long condition firing right away either. So I think it's safe to just turn off all the resets on the signal blocker, call it good, to set it like that. So there we go. So that essentially is it. So kind of the keys here were setting up these signal extenders in this look back. Right, the key was to take these crossovers and extend them forward in time until the third condition could set up, right? So we got condition 1 and 2, we look for that to happen, then we extend it forward in time until condition 3 can fire. So that was really kind of the key here. Alright, so we got this solver. Let me zoom in here. Right, so the large trigger crossover solver, that was condition 1. So if you want, I could just put a 1 in there. That was condition 1. And then the EMAs crossing over was condition 2. And so this AND node is telling us when condition 1 and 2 happen within 4 bars of each other. And this solver here was condition 3. So let's rename this here 3. So this was the high or the low. Let's see, within 3 ticks of the large trigger. Alright, then so I like to leave the name of the solver at the end, so I'll just leave that comp on there, so that tells me that this is a comparison solver. So right, there we go. So this was condition 3. So we took condition 1 and 2, we extended condition 1 forward in time, and then we extended condition 1 and 2 forward in time into this AND node, and then this AND node looked for condition 3. We can really get fancy if you want. So there. So you can really, you can rename all this stuff, so that way when you go to look at it later, you'll understand excuse me, what the purpose of each of these is for. So it's like this guy here. So we're extending condition 1. Yeah. All right. There. And we know what? We never ended up using this other look back here. So I'll just take it off, delete it out of there. There we go. All right. So yeah, I'm gonna see if there's any questions on this. And looks like a SIF is a happy camper. Let's see. I think this came from Louis. Yeah, I think this came from Louis. All right. So what's being wanted here? What we want to do is we're using 2 different time frames. So right, we have an 18 brick Pro Renko, and we have a 9 brick Pro Renko. So we're using the higher brick size to determine the trend. So to determine the trend, I'm just assuming that I guess when the bars are down, that's going to be for a downtrend, and if the 18 brick Renkos are pointed up, if the bars are pointed up, that's going to be the uptrend. Let's see, let me just double check here. Yep, so we're just looking to see if the bricks are pointed up or pointed down. So if the bars are up bars or if the bars are down bars. All right, so we'll build the higher time frame condition first, and then we'll get into working on the lower time frame here. All right, so we'll switch this over to the Pro Renko. And let me double check what the settings were. So 18 and 1. Actually, nope. Actually, I don't want to change this to the higher time frame. Actually, I'm going to change that chart to the lower time frame. So 9 and 1. All right. So let's go 9 and 1. I'm going to open up a new chart. So I'm going to open up a new chart just for reference here. So we're not going to put BloodHound on this, but it's just going to be for reference. Let's see, yeah, 5 days ought to be plenty. Alright, so this will just be our higher time frame reference chart, but I'm still going to work with BloodHound on the lower time frame chart. And let's see, oh, you know what? Let me, oh, it did switch to the 6. Okay, good. Alright. Alright, so let's get BloodHound open. So BloodHound is still running on the lower time frame chart. So that's where you want, so the way NinjaTrader works with multiple time frames is you always want BloodHound to run on the smallest time frame that you're working with. Alright, so I do have other workshop videos that explain why that is in far more detail, and it takes a while to explain that, so I'm not going to explain it now, but if anybody would like me to pull up that video for them and find it for them so they can understand why you always want BloodHound on the smaller time frame, just let me know and I can find that video for you later on. So for now, just take it for granted that you always want BloodHound to run on the smaller time frame chart, the smallest time frame that you're working with. Alright, so for now, we'll add a chart to BloodHound. So we'll add this 18 brick renko. There we go. Alright, so 18 and 1. So there we go. So we got the 18 brick chart on BloodHound, and what Louis is looking at is just simply if the bars are pointed up or pointed down. So what that is in BloodHound is that's just looking at the bar direction. So let's take the bar direction and add it here. So I put the bar direction underneath, right, the 18 brick renko there. So let me start working on the logic board here. Alright, so I'm going to make a new logic template, and so we'll just call this a higher time frame filter. Filtered signal, yeah. Alright, so I've already got this bar direction solver already created on the higher time frame. So when I'm on the logic board here, I go to solver nodes and see there's an existing nodes here. So I'm going to go to existing nodes. I'm going to go down to the 18 brick chart, and there's my bar direction solver. So I'm going to drop that on the board here. Right? You'll notice it has text above the node that tells you what the time frame or what chart this solver is actually operating on. So this solver is actually operating on the higher time frame. So I'm just going to connect that up like that, and we'll go back to the chart and we'll take a look. So you'll notice down here BloodHound says we need to press F5, so we need to get NinjaTrader to build this 18 brick chart. We need to get NinjaTrader to build that, so we're going to have to refresh the chart. NinjaTrader will build that higher time frame for us. And so there you go. We can see on the chart here whether we have up bars or down bars. So we can see that on the higher time frame we have a couple of down bars here. And oh, you know what? The bar coloring is actually opposite. Let me let me get the bar coloring the same here. And there we go. Let me just clean this up, get all the extra indicators off. Okay, there we go. So you can see we on the higher time frame we have a couple of down bars, right? And so the BloodHound's short output identifies when the higher time frame was down for these 2 bars, right? And then we have a bunch of up bars here, and BloodHound is marking the area when we had those up bars. So there we go, pretty simple filter, right? So we only want to look for long trades like this when the higher time frame bars are up, and we only want to look for short trades like this when the higher time frame bars are down. So that was that's simply it. That's the filter. So next, let's go back to the logic board. So there's our filter, and at some point we're going to have to take an AND node, connect this filter to an AND node with the actual trade signals. So all right, so let's find the rest of what the actual trade triggers are here. Okay, so here is the actual signal. So with the trend, buy on the first up bar renko. All right, so essentially on the first bar that reverses direction, that is the trade signal, and they're going to be filtered by the higher time frame. And all right, so let's slide BloodHound over here. So the trade signal is just simply the price bars reversing, right? Whenever the price bars reverse. So to do that, we're going to look at the price reversing on the default time frame, and we want the inflection solver. So the inflection solver is basically, it looks for things to reverse. So an inflection is a reversal point. So let's connect that up, right? So this solver is on the default time frame. So in other words, it's going to be looking for these bars to reverse. And so let me name this first. So we're going to be looking for price to inflect or reverse. And we're going to set this to price. All right, so we changed our type to price. And if we look at the chart, right, we can see whenever price reverses, we get a buy or a sell signal. Right, so that's just on all of the price reversals here. So the last step that we need to do is connect it to our higher time frame filter. So here's where that AND node comes in play. So we'll connect it to the AND node. All right, so there we go. We still have all the signals. So now once we connect our higher time frame filter in, there. Actually, you can see a lot of the signals disappeared now. So now we're just left with these 2 short signals when the higher time frame was down. Oh, let's take a look at this. So let's take a look at our higher time frame solver here. Right? So you can see this white rectangle is marking the short. Is telling us it's marking when the higher time frame is in a short condition, and so therefore we only got short signals there. All right, let's look at the higher time frame again. So now I've got marked just when the higher time frame was in an uptrend, and if we look at the trade signals, we can see there were no long signals. This long signal came a couple bars too late, so the higher time frames flipped over. So this short signal got filtered out because the higher time frame was in a long state. Right? So the higher time frame was in a long state, and so that short signal got filtered out. Let's take a look at the AND node again. There we go. So let's see what else we have. Alright, there's a couple of short signals. So let's take a look at the higher time frame. Yep. So we can see, it was a higher time frame was in a short condition, and so we got a couple of those short trades firing off there. Let's see, let's scroll back here. And alright, so here now we should start getting a bunch of long signals here. Let's take a look at the AND node. And there we go. So there are some long trade signals. Alright, and there was one more condition here. So let's see. Louis is using the chandelier stop as an exit. So I don't actually have the chandelier, but what I do have is something else. I've got the super trend indicator, which I think they're probably both one and the same. I think the super trend and the chandelier is probably doing the same thing. So I'm going to use the super trend instead of the chandelier indicator as the or it's called the chandelier stop. Yeah, the indicator is called the chandelier stop as the exit. So all right, so let's put that indicator on here. So there we go. So I have the Anna super trend, which I believe does the same thing. We'll get this on here and we'll take a look. And let's see. It looks like I need to do some adjustments here. Let's change that. Well, it's not exactly the same, but it's as close as I can get without actually having the chandelier indicator. So, all right. So I'm just going to go with that. So I changed my super trend to 3, 1.5, and 3, which got us kind of close to that screenshot. Let's see. Yeah, this chandelier doesn't appear to be quite as dynamic as the super trend is, but essentially it's similar. So, all right. So that super trend stop. Scale this out here. Right, so I think what Louis wants is when price crosses the chandelier plot, that is your exit signal right there. So basically, when the bar reverses, that's your exit. All right, let's get BloodHound back up. There we go. Alright, just a moment while I get set up. Alright, so this was our entry. So that's our entry. And so next, let's build an exit here. So, alright, so I created a new logic template, and that's going to be our exit. And in this case, we're going to use the super trend. And so Louis can just replace the super trend indicator with the chandelier indicator, and you'll get the same results. Alright, so once again, just to look at this, to kind of look at this again, what we have is we have price crossing over, right, crossing over that super trend line. And so that was Louis' exit right there. We can see here we had price crossing over the super trend line as well. So hopefully you can see the super trend line there. Price crossed it, and that's the exit. So we can just simply, so we're going to go to our default time frame. So remember, our exit is running on our default time frame. So we'll go to the default time frame, and we're going to grab a crossover solver. Alright, so let me rename this. So we are looking for price crossing over the super trend. Alright. So we're going to set A. We're going to set indicator A to price. And we're going to set B to our super trend. And in Louis' case, he would set this to his chandelier indicator. So let's see, there we go. Add that on here. And so I'm going to change some settings here to match what I did on the chart. There, alright, so we got the stop dot selected as our plot. And if we look at the chart, there we go. So that's our exit signals. Alright, so if the way, right, so the way these exit signals work is, right, so if the system is in a long trade, this short exit signal, only the short exit signal will close out a long trade, right? So this long exit signal would not exit a long trade. So only a short exit signal will exit a long position. So that's that. That's simple. So let's gonna take another run through on this, and clean off the arrows. There we go. All right. So here's the entry signals, and let's mark a couple of these. All right. So we do have an entry signal there. We have one there. We have one there. So there's 3 entry signals here. And let me get rid of the arrows from the super trend. Those get a little confusing. There we go. Turn those arrows off. All right. There. Okay, so I've got a couple of long signals marked. All right, and now let's take a look at the exit signals. And there we go. So we're in a long position, and then we get closed out by this exit signal. All right, and let's grab another one. So here's another long position, and we get closed out by that exit signal there. All right. So that's it for Louis. That's, that one's pretty simple to accomplish. So there's the description of the system. And let's see, let's get rid of that chart. Okay. So this system is it's using the price crossing the EMA 50 as its filter, as the trade signal filter. Right, so instead of using a higher time frame, we're just going to check to see if price is above or below the 50 EMA. So it's not price crossing the 50 EMA, it's price being above or below the EMA. Right, so technically there is a difference. So like on this chart here, right, if I show you the exit logic, so if you remember, the exit logic used a crossover solver, right? So that's a crossing. A crossing only occurs on one bar. You only get a crossing on one bar, but really what the filter is here is price being above or below the 50 EMA. So there's a technical difference there. Let's see, and so all right, so we want to signal long entries when, let's see, yeah, price is above the 50 EMA, and we only want short entries when price is below the 50 EMA. So let's see, this came from Don. Yeah, so Don just wants to know how to build the filter. So he's got his own set of trade logic here. He's got his own stuff determining what the trade signal is, but he just wants to know, how to build this 50 EMA filter. So, right. So give me a moment to get my chart ready here. So I'm going to make some of these other indicators a little lighter, thinner, push them in the background. All right, so let's, actually, that's right, I already have a 50 EMA on here. So I'll just make that really thick. And okay, let's just go to a different bar just to kind of change things up a little bit. So I'll just go to a 5 range. Okay. All right, well, I'm going to create a new logic template here. So, all right, this is price above or below the EMA 50 filter. All right, so we want to do this on the default time frame. So we're going to grab an indicator comparison. So the indicator comparison is what tells us if something is above is something else, right? So in other words, if A is greater than B, so if something is greater than something else, or if A is less than B, so one piece of data is less or below the other piece of data. So we're going to look to see when price, so we're going to set A to price, set this to price, and we're going to set B to the moving average. So we'll set this to our EMA 50. All right, so now if we take a look at the outputs that are set, right, so that's set to 1, that's set to 1. So the default settings for a long output is when A is greater than B. So in other words, if the closing price of the bar is greater than the 50 EMA, we're going to get a long output, but only if we connect it up here. So that's why we want to make sure our solvers are connected up when we're building this stuff. Okay, now we can see an output here. So now this makes sense, right? Let's see. Let me take a moment to name this solver here. So this is price above or below the EMA 50. Alright, I can get a little fancy here and just put filter there. Yeah, so we'll zoom in here. So, yep, so we can see whenever price crosses above our 50 EMA, so the real thick red line is the 50 EMA, and whenever price is above it, right, we have a long output. So that can be used to filter out the long only trades. And here's a good area. Yeah. And of course, if price is below our 50 EMA, we get a short output. And that can be used to filter out short only trades. And so the last thing that's needed, well, a couple things are needed, but to use this as a filter, we do need an AND node. Like so. So basically, you would take the rest of your trade signals and connect it into this AND node here. And then this AND node would use this comparison solver to filter the trade signals for long only or short only. Right, so it's the exact same concept as this higher time frame filter that we built. Right, so this solver here is looking at the higher time frame. Right, so it's giving us a continuous long or short. Right, and then we use an AND node to connect up the actual trade signals. So this solver actually did the trade signals, and this solver did the filtering. And when you combine them with an AND node, that's when we got, our filtered trade signals. So, so same concept here for this. So there's the filter, and I tell you what, since we already have we have this price inflection, so we'll just pretend this is our trade signals. I'll just connect it up there, and we now have filtered trades, right? So you can see we're only getting groups of long signals, and then we're getting groups of short signals, right? Groups of long signals. So we can see that the signals are getting filtered, by long or short, depending if price is below that moving average, or if price is above our moving average. All right. So also let me point out that there's another video I did a while back that covers this filtering in a more broader context, and I give more examples. I think I give about 5 examples of different kind of filters, just to really hammer home how filtering works with BloodHound. So let's go to YouTube. Alright, so I'm at YouTube here, and we're going to type in BloodHound Workshop, right? So this is the BloodHound Workshop that you're at, and let's see, I think the keyword would be trade filters or trade filter. Yep, here we go. So the second video that came up, many trend filter examples. All right. Let's see, and nesting different time frame prices. But anyways, so the trend filter examples is right there. Second one on the list. So let's see, we can open this up And let's go down to the description. Yeah, here we go. So you can see there's timestamps on here. Let's see. All right, so here's one. How to use the ANA Super Trend as a trend filter. Here we go. Building a trend filter that allows longs only when price is more than 10 ticks above a moving average, and allow short only when price is more than 10 ticks below a moving average. And so here's another one, building a trend filter using the ADXVMA. Yeah, so I guess it looks like there was 3 examples here of doing some trend filtering. All right, I think that did it for the questions that came in by email. So let me take a look at the questions on the board here. See, Mike brought up a good point here. Mike from support brought up a good point. Let me find that screenshot. Yeah, here we go. So from this screenshot here, I noticed that Mike noticed that Louis is running the rainbow, that rainbow indicator. It's a neat, cool, I gotta say, it is a really cool, neat, free tool that this gentleman's putting out. But I do want to let you know that this rainbow, you know, he's doing all kinds of things internally to NinjaTrader, and this rainbow adversely affects BloodHound. So if you have rainbow running on the chart with BloodHound, it will actually, no, I think you just simply having rainbow installed actually affects BloodHound. So what happens is, so I've got BloodHound open here, and I'm looking at the solver tab, and so you see this other chart time frame that I have selected, right? And so over here on the right, you can put whatever kind of bars you want to use, for your chart. So what happens is the rainbow indicator, for some reason, it's messing with Ninja's what's the right word? Chart. It's messing with Ninja's bar information. It's messing with the data series information, and this whole window goes blank, right? So if you're working with BloodHound and you put multiple time frames or additional charts into BloodHound, and this window is blank, it's because of the rainbow is doing that. So Louis, in order to do this, you will have to uninstall rainbow. Otherwise, you won't be able to set up this 18 brick Pro Renko here. All right, I've got a couple of questions about using Raven. So yeah, let me answer a couple of questions here. Yeah, so Raven, Robert's asking, he's got a question about Raven, and so does Louis. So let's see, Louis is asking if an ATM can be used to in conjunction with the BloodHound system that was just built for him. And so yes indeed, Raven can use an ATM. All right, so let me close this out, and I need to refresh the chart here because I added that 1 minute time frame and then removed it. So let's clear that out. All right. And let's get rid of that. Don't need that anymore. All right. So I'm going to pull up the strategies window, and we have Raven on here. So let's get Raven on here. And let's load up today's BloodHound file. So there's today's BloodHound file. Load that up. And we're gonna, let's put on Louis' example there. All right, so there it is. So it looks good. So, when you're loading your system into Raven, it's always a good idea to take a look at the logic templates and just make sure everything looks like it's connected correctly. Because you'll find that when you're building a system and testing it, sometimes it's easy to leave it in the wrong state. So I could have accidentally left it like this by accident. So it's always good to check your leaders, make sure everything looks like it's connected correctly. So there we go. So that's the correct way. All right. So we've got our BloodHound file loaded in to Raven. So next we're going to set our entry logic. So we'll set it to, there we go, the higher time frame signal. And let's also set a exit logic. We can do that as well. So they're using the super trend as the exit. And then Louis wants to run an ATM. So we'll change this to an ATM. There we go. And so all you got to do is put the name of your ATM in there, and you're done. So just one note, you can't backtest an ATM. So Ninja does not have the capability to backtest an ATM. So there is no backtesting option. If you do want to do some backtesting, you'll have to put it back to default so you can see the profit target and stop loss. So put this back to default, and then for backtesting, you want to take start auto enabled on, set that to true, and then you can see backtest mode comes on. Right now, backtest mode is visible. So you'll notice if I set this, the managed trades, if I set this back to ATM, if I set that back to ATM, right, you notice that backtest mode disappears, and that's because Ninja cannot backtest an ATM. So, but let's see. Next thing I need to do is get the name of an ATM. And let's see. I think I remember the name of an ATM. I think that one exists. And all right, so I'll put the ATM in there, turn this on, and I'll just fire it off. And it looks like we're getting plenty of signals here. So wait, let's see here. So I just want to make sure that Raven's showing us what we want to see here. Right, so you notice there's two buttons here. There's two BloodHound buttons. Right, one's black. So the black one is BloodHound. The orange one, that's Raven. So this is BloodHound running inside of Raven. So that's why this one's orange. So this pulls up Raven. So you'll notice it has this pull down menu. So if I wanted to, I could have Raven show me any signal that I wanted here by changing this pull down menu. So if I want, we could look at the exits, the super trend exits. So there's the exit signals for the super trend exit. I could look at just price above or below the 50 EMA signals there, or I could put it back to that higher time frame filter, like so. So just keep in mind that when you have Raven on the chart, and I'll just take BloodHound off. So there we go. So now we just have Raven only. I took BloodHound off. So if you're not seeing, the signals that you expect to see from Raven, then it's because you have the wrong logic template selected. So, all right. So I could have the exit signals shown on my chart, but Raven is not going to trade those exit signals. So if we go back into Raven, right? So let's take a look at Raven here. So remember, I have Raven. I have the entry logic for Raven set to trade the entry higher time frame signals. So Raven's going to use this logic template to generate the trade signals. So, right, regardless of what I have this set to on the chart. So, and then Raven is also going to use this exit logic to exit the trades as well, along with the ATM. So the ATM has its own stop management as well. So, all right, I'll just put that back on the entry signals so it makes a little more sense there. And actually, I wonder. I'm just going to double check, make sure I put the correct ATM name in. Let's pull up a DOM. And yeah, all right, so T20, S20, Q7. And I'm just going to double check the name in Raven here. And yep, okay. Cool. So we just have to wait for a trade to fire off, and we'll see. So once a trade signal fires off, we'll see Raven submitting that ATM that I already have made. All right. So okay. So that's Louis' question. Well, okay. Actually, first before I get to Robert's, yeah, that's Louis asking, how do you ignore buy signals if already long, or vice versa? Yeah, so Raven will only place one trade at a time. So we can see that there's a lot of short trade signals here. So Raven is not going to stack trades on top of each other. So what's going to happen here is, let's kind of scroll back here. So Raven will place the first short trade, and then when the next signal comes along here, Raven will ignore it if it's still in the trade, right? Raven will only place one trade at a time. So this second short signal will get ignored if Raven still has that short trade on. So as long as this short trade is still open, then all these other short signals just get ignored. Right, so let's just say, finally, the trade gets stopped out right here. So, if the trade gets stopped out on this bar, then, because since Raven is flat after getting stopped out, then the next short signal, Raven would place another short trade, right? And this next signal would get ignored if the trade was still open. So, and wow, looks like oil has really been range bound today, and it just doesn't want to give us any price movement, does it? Let's see if I can change this to something that's going to give us some signals here. Yeah, it looks like the ES and the YM's moving. So let's switch this over to the YM. All right, so hopefully we'll see something fire off here. So let's address Robert's question. So Robert has a system that could possibly place a trade, could place a long trade and a short trade on the same bar. So let's see. Yeah, let me pull up another chart to work with here. So we'll just put this on a minute bar here. And just to give a simple example, yeah, here's a good example. So Robert's got a system that would place a long trade here, and it would go long, and then it would also place I guess a short trade somewhere around there, I think, something like that. So, all right, so I guess the idea here is that, you know, on the same bar, when price moves up high enough, a long signal could get generated, and then on the same bar, when price moves down, a short signal could get generated. And so right now, the way Robert has Raven set up is it's only generating one trade or the other. So whichever one fires off first. So let's just say in this case, the long trade fired off first. And so Robert's only seeing just the long trade triggering, and when price, you know, retreats back down, Robert's not seeing the short trade firing off. So he's wanting to know, you know, how can we get two trades to fire off on the same bar? So what this involves is, let me pull up Raven here. So I don't actually have an example to load into this, but I'm just going to explain the settings here. Alright, so here's something that's key to Robert's system, is Robert has calculate on bar close set to false. Right, so when this calculate on bar close is set to false, this is a NinjaTrader setting here. So this is a global setting that affects how Raven operates. Right, just as this calculate on bar close affects how your indicators operate as well. So it affects Raven as a whole. And wow, looks like price is just taking off. Man, maybe we should be buying some YM here. Hopefully we'll get a pullback in a trade. But okay, so let's getting back to Robert's question. So with this calculate on bar close set to false, what that does is that allows the this long signal here, you know, that I kind of pointed out with the green dot. It allows that long signal to fire off immediately as soon as price moves high enough. You know, so the trade will fire off as the bar is building. Right, it fires off before the bar closes, and so that way Robert can get into the trade, you know, as soon as possible. And then we can see price inevitably move down, and then a short signal would have fired off. Well, Robert wants a short signal to fire off afterwards. So what? So the reason why Robert doesn't see this second signal firing off on the same bar is this setting right here. So we have this allow re-entries on the same bar. So this allow re-entries on the same bar, as the name implies, if I set it to true, Raven will re-enter the trade on the same bar, you know, but this setting only has effect. This setting only does something, is only effective when calculate on bar close is set to false. All right, so setting this to true will allow Raven to fire off multiple signals on the same bar. All right, so so normally, NinjaTrader defaults to calculate on bars set to true. That's the default setting that NinjaTrader sets up. So what that means is that Raven only calculates when the bar closes, right? So bars only close once, so Raven only gets calculated once per bar. So therefore you can only have one trade executed per bar. And so that's why this allow re-entries on the same bar has no effect when this is set to true, right? So when this is set to true, that means you can only get one execution per bar just by the nature of the setting. So therefore you can't have re-entries on the same bar. So this really has no effect when this is set to true. So yeah, all right. So that's hopefully that covers it for Robert's question. So let's see. Let me just remove that and close that out. And let me see the other questions here. Okay, let's see. Oh, that's interesting. Let's take a look here. We finally got a signal to fire off. So there you go. There's that ATM firing off the trade. And let's pull this down here so we can see all the trade signals. So there we go. So yeah, this ATM fires off 7 contracts. You know, you can see three different levels there. So let's see if we get our first one hit. And so we can see here, Raven tells us 7 contracts green, so that's 7 contracts long. And the display is telling us the number of ticks of profit. If we want, we can change it to dollars. So I just clicked on the black box and it shows the profit in dollars. If I click the black box again, it shows us percentage, profit in percentage. And I can click it again and it's going to go back to ticks. So there's the profit in ticks. And we almost had 10 ticks and almost hit our target. And so you can just toggle through the display that you want to see. So whatever you like to see, ticks or money, whatever. So, all right. And oh yeah, so good point. So check this out. So we did get 2 long signals firing off here, but as you can see, Raven did not execute a second long position. It only executed the first long position. So that signal there, that one got executed, and this long signal got ignored. So, all right, so Raven will only execute 1 trade at a time. So if a short trade or if a short signal came along, Raven can reverse to a short signal. So Raven can cancel this long and reverse it to a short if a short signal comes along.